Walking is one of the simplest and most accessible forms of exercise, yet its benefits extend far beyond physical health, from boosting mental clarity and emotional well-being to fostering creativity and social connections. A regular walking routine can transform multiple aspects of life. What makes walking such a powerful habit, and how can people incorporate it into their daily lives for maximum impact? As a part of this series, we had the pleasure of interviewing Brad Kearns. Brad is an author, podcast host, professional speed golfer, USA #1 ranked in the age group 55 to 59 Masters high jumper, and former professional triathlete. Brad is Mark Sisson's longtime writing partner, including the New York Times bestseller, The Keto Reset Diet. He's a former U.S. national champion and #3 world ranked professional triathlete, Guinness World Record professional speed golfer, and elite masters track and field sprinter and high jumper. His B.rad podcast is a top 10 ranked podcast in Apple Podcasts fitness category. Brad, thanks for being here today.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure. And it was great to get a little bit of your background before we hit record and your massive daily step count and tremendous success with fat reduction, basically transforming your body. And it's really nice to know that you put walking as the centerpiece there because the world that I live in, the fitness world and the high level competition world and the big scene in the marathon and endurance running training, a lot of people are obsessed with really pushing themselves hard, almost to the point of exhaustion, counting up the impressive calorie counts of how many calories they're burning on their 8 mile run and trying to do that day after day. And the science is now really clear that extreme exercise in pursuit of fat reduction simply does not work. And it's kind of counterintuitive at first because you're looking on the internet and seeing that an 8 mile run indeed burns 627 calories. And if you watch your portion sizes, you're going to create this deficit. But the area of research known as the compensation theory of exercise, it describes how when you burn an extreme amount of calories or when you push yourself with exhaustive workouts, what happens is your body engages in an assortment of compensatory mechanisms to slow down and become lazier throughout the day and to dysregulate your appetite and satiety hormones such that you eat more food over the course of the day because you went out there before dark and laced up your running shoes and ran 8 miles. So uh, extreme exercise or an ill-advised exercise program makes you eat more and be lazier.
It's funny that you say that because what I would you believe me if I told you I don't count calories at all? And this whole weight loss journey of mine, I've not counted calories. I've followed the philosophy that if I'm eating nothing but healthy food, and for me, healthy food is fruits, vegetables, um, grains, legumes, and nuts and seeds. That's most of what I eat. If I'm eating healthy food and I'm getting some exercise, I don't need to count calories. As long as you stop eating when you're full. Or as the Japanese say, you should stop eating when you're 80% full.
Hari
Um,
Hachi Bunmei, it's
all right,
called.
yeah, absolutely. You're familiar with it. Um, and so everybody, you in the old days, we always had this obsession with counting calories, counting calories, counting calories. And like you said, all the people, all the marathoners, the endurance athletes counting how many calories they lost and everything. I think that there's a term for this. You cannot exercise your way out of a poor diet. It doesn't work. And I, it's funny because when I first started, every single person who saw the way I exercised told me you're going too slowly. You're not getting your heart rate up. You're not going to get anywhere. And all I know is I've, lost 200 plus pounds and kept it off. And my blood pressure is 98 over 60. And I feel great. So I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not. It's my philosophy is slow and easy, slow and easy. Don't tear yourself up, especially as you're getting older. I mean, do you feel that, or have your recovery times changed any as you've gotten a little bit wiser? I won't say older, I'll say wiser.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is a really important concept for everyone to adopt a healthy perspective on. I just had a 60th birthday party and we are making up a poster with pictures and putting in decorations on the wall. And I came up with this slogan, 60 is the new 60. And what I mean by that is I think I'm getting a little tired and burnt out of all the lip service that we pay to aging. And people say, yeah, 60 is the new 30. I feel great. Everything's fine. But it's kind of disingenuous because we do have to respect the realities of chronological aging and try to age as gracefully as possible, but still recognize that it's there. And one of the ways that we have to do that is to revise and adjust our fitness and lifestyle goals in an age appropriate manner. So, with you reading up my introduction and people realizing that I'm an extreme enthusiast of masters track and field competition, where I'm training hard and trying to perform these brief, explosive, powerful events like the high jump and the 400 meters. I can't do the same stuff that I did in high school and college when I was an elite distance runner and later professional triathlete. And that's taken a recalibration of my mindset because I get little aches and pains and injuries from being so competitive and so enthusiastic that I've pushed my body a little bit too hard, or I'm going out there with a little bit too much frequency for the reality that I'm in the old person's age division now, not in the young person. So it's a graceful way to look at the process of aging, knowing that we're facing it in so many different ways, but we certainly don't have to fall in line with the disastrous and embarrassing cultural norms where we look around and all of us are looking at dramatically accelerated aging driven by adverse lifestyle practices rather than, hey, when you turn 50, this happens, and when you turn 60, this happens. Well, it happens if you don't do anything about it. And then we have that life expectancy, which is also embarrassing that the USA is ranked 35th in the world in life expectancy, down below Costa Rica and other nations that have much less advantage and affluence and highest sophistication of medical care. So we're doing ourselves in, even though we have, in many cases, all the knowledge and the resources necessary to be able to sail to 100, for example, which is my intention. And I'm almost certain that, barring walking in front of a bus, that this is well within my grasp and my capability because I'm doing everything I can to optimize my function at whatever age I happen to be.
Absolutely. I feel the exact same way about doing this. And I'm a believer that the US statistics you just quoted, that it doesn't have to be that way, that can change. And I think the way to change is not to criticize the current system. I think the way to change is to arm people with knowledge. And when you arm people with knowledge, motivation, and desire, and if they can put all those things together, it's within their power to make their own changes. And who cares what, you know, food is being served to us or anything, because it's like, you take control of your life and you make your own wise choices. If somebody was overweight and wanted to start getting some exercise, do you think gentle, moderate walking is a good way to start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, walking is the quintessential human form of locomotion. It's essentially what makes us human, which is kind of a mind-blowing insight to reflect upon for a moment. As we know, we branched off from our ape cousins around 5 million years ago into the Homo genus, and one of the last parts of the body to evolve was the big toe. So we developed this aligned. That's what they call it when instead of opposable or sticking out like a claw. We developed the aligned big toe that was shorter than what's seen in our ape cousins, and that allowed us to come down out of trees and start walking, start hunting and gathering, and getting access to the most nutritious foods that allowed us to rise up to the top of the food chain. So walking literally made us human, and yet today we kind of neglect it or disrespect it in favor of all the comfort and convenience and being able to drive our cars everywhere or otherwise sit around instead of having to go and get food when it comes to be 5 p.m. We can click a button on our computer and the food will come to the door and all those things. So it's this critical health objective that I like to position in the same category as sleeping, such that we don't get overwhelmed with another fitness objective. And next week, your guest is going to talk about how great yoga is. And the next week, you're going to talk about strength training. And the next person's going to talk about the rowing machine. And we can get all overwhelmed with, like, yeah, I need to get my to-do list built up with all these fitness musts. Now, walking, I put in a different category because it's the foundation that supports all other forms of more complex human movement. So if you do aspire to get your butt to the gym because it's New Year's resolutions time and you want to get in shape in 2025 or 2026 or whenever it happens, walking is the starting point so that you can actually absorb and benefit from, let's say, a difficult workout like a boot camp class or going through the machine weight circuit at the gym. Otherwise, if you're unfit and sedentary and you walk in and start lifting weights, you're going to be huffing and puffing after a couple sets, and you're not going to be able to accomplish an appropriate amount of work to stimulate a fitness adaptation. So walking is the baseline, the foundation for being a healthy human. And then when we get that handled, we can aspire to perhaps become a fit human as well as a healthy human.
And there's a whole other aspect of walking. It's very meditative.
Right.
It can be, as I like to say, when I walk, all the walking I've done, I've met some very interesting people over the years. And would you care to guess who the most interesting person I've met was?
Uh, the
You're looking at him. Most interesting person I've met is myself.
That's a great line, man. I love that, Stanley.
Because
Yeah, get to know yourself. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, that's
yeah,
beautiful.
you do a
Yeah,
lot of heavy duty thinking.
yeah, yeah.
What's important? How do you feel? You get in touch with your body. I was always a person when I was growing up. I was always in touch with my mind, and my mind and my body was out of balance.
Mm,
Everything else, and then I got to the point where I got my body into balance, and then my mind had to catch up. Yeah, it was kind of, kind of switched the other way. But what I like to tell people is there's multiple ways to exercise, and a lot of it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are like Brad's, where you're competitive, there's a whole different way to exercise. And that's a whole different world. And it's a fun world. And it's a great world. I love track and field. I love to follow it. I pay attention to it. It's great,
mm,
great stuff. And then there's my, what I like to call my way of looking at it. 'Cause it's funny, Brad is an athlete, and I consider myself an athlete as well because I walk 10 to 15 miles every day. So I consider that being an athlete. But I walk very slowly.
mm,
I walk for long periods of time, nice and easy. I don't get my heart rate up very high at all. I mean, I spend hours a day on the treadmill, and my heart rate probably never gets above 85. Yet, and when I started out, all the professionals told me, you got to go faster. You got to go faster. And I go, but it hurts when I go faster.
mm,
I don't want to beat myself up.
mm.
And so I just stuck with what I was doing. And lo and behold, the weight came off, my blood pressure went down, and I feel fantastic. So it's kind of, I think the most important thing is that we move.
You got it, Stanley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's an insight that we put in the book Born to Walk that really will hit home and I think be memorable for people. Um, the Homo sapiens species has a genetic obligation to move in order to be healthy, in order to operate in the optimal manner. So, over 2.5 million years, through human evolution, we have been in near constant movement throughout the day. And this goes all the way up to perhaps our grandparents' generation, right? So, if you think
Mhm.
about the lives our grandparents had, they were walking in and out of the house, hanging clothes on the clothesline and taking them off and folding them, and then going in to prepare a meal from scratch, and all these things that went away only in the last 50 years, let's say, when we were able to go get fast food and start to get more and more comfort and convenience and less movement. But throughout all that time, our fat burning systems, it is known that even a short period of stillness will cause dysfunction in glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity in the body. So, in other words, you become worse at burning stored fat if you sit for as little as 20 minutes. There's research showing this. There's also extensive research on cognitive function that we really only have the capability of concentrating on a peak cognitive task for around 20 minutes at a time before we require a break to refresh the brain neurons and then continue to perform at a high level. So if you insist on sitting at your desk and grinding away for hours at a time, you have dysfunction in your metabolism as well as your cognitive performance. So that's what humans are all about. And then the compare and contrast that I'm referencing, we put in the book to illustrate this point is here's another species, the African lion, one of the apex predators. It's called Panthera leo. We're called Homo sapiens. The African lion is known to sleep for around 21 hours per day. That is the lion living its best life. And then it gets up around sunset. The reason it sleeps so much is it can't regulate heat very well, so it has to
Okay.
sleep during the hot parts of the day. And then
Okay.
at sunset, it launches a brief, savage, all-out attack lasting for no longer than 30 seconds. Again, because the lion's genetics, very powerful, explosive, vicious animal. It goes after its prey. It either succeeds or fails in 30 seconds. And then, if it is successful, which it often is, the lion will have its feast and is known to sleep for around 24 hours after a successful hunt, and then go back into their pattern of sleeping 20 or 21 hours a day, launching another brief all-out attack. And that is the lion living its best life. So that's genetics right there. And our genetics are pretty much the opposite, where we are out and about doing our hunting and gathering, and the research from the modern day hunter and gatherers like the Hadza in Tanzania, heavily studied. They walk for around 3 to 9 miles every day. Not as much as Stanley, but still a very impressive amount for the Hadza tending to their camp. The hunters are walking more than the gatherers, which is often a male-female split there. But
Mhm.
they're on the move. And even when they're resting and relaxing, they're in a squat position. They're not sitting on a couch or a chair and deloading their skeleton like we do routinely without a second thought. But sitting is a unique position for the human because uh, it causes a lot of skeletal load problems when we sit for prolonged periods of time. So even when you're squatting or even sitting on the ground, it's called there's force production even when you're sitting on the ground because you're still supporting your skeleton and having to use the muscles and the joints in a manner that's different when you completely deload everything and collapse into a chair or a couch. So when we spend those long periods of time not even supporting our own skeletal weight, that's when we become weak, atrophied, poor functionality. Even when we do try to do something in the name of fitness, it makes it really tough. So the antidote for all that, besides getting rid of your chair and spending more time squatting, is to get on the move and put in some steps every day. And the great research now, where the step count has become this popular notion in the fitness scene, it's really nice to see just how broad-based those benefits are. There's a prominent study from UCLA where they had two groups of seniors over age 65, and the one group was considered sedentary. They failed to get a bare minimum of 4,000 steps per day. And then the other group was well over 4,000 steps, possibly drifting up to the common recommendations to get 8,000 or 10,000 steps a day. And the group in the inactive category had smaller hippocampi. They had worse short-term memory processing. They had worse long-term memory recall and organization. So in other words, their brains worked in a manner that was inferior to the other group of seniors that got their sufficient daily steps. And as you know, there's great research coming out of the Cooper Institute that there's no upper limit to the benefits of being more active. And the Cooper Institute studied this group of people that they found that they called super exercisers, where they reported an average weekly exercise volume of 35 hours. So these were people like you that were walking for miles and miles every day, and they had the absolute highest scores in all the longevity categories. So they were very, very active, with no upper limit to that potential. And I would say to the listener, for example, if you decide to take next summer off and declare that you're going to walk the Appalachian Trail or the Colorado Trail or the John Muir Trail in the Sierras, that would be by and large a tremendous boost to your health to be out there in the fresh air and nature for hours and hours every day. Now, that's a little different than the people in the gym culture who are pushing their bodies too hard that I talked about, sitting around otherwise because they got too tired from their workout patterns, consuming too many calories, a lot of times reaching for the sweets and the treats that they feel like they deserve because they push themselves too hard with that strenuous 1 hour workout. So we're talking about the benefits of low level everyday activity. Of course, walking is the centerpiece, but many other things can count in that category. So it can be
Absolutely.
your Tai
Absolutely.
Chi, your yoga, your gentle exercises that you like to do on the mat when you wake up, which is how I start my day with doing some foot mobility and some mobility, flexibility, strengthening exercises, anything that's moving. And you know what even counts in the movement objective is foam rolling. So if you want to relax in front of the TV at night and roll up and down on the roller, get your muscles unknotted, that is the body moving through, the lymphatic system's working, the blood's flowing, the oxygen is flowing. So all kinds of things count toward your movement objective. But of course, walking would be at the centerpiece and the simplest and most accessible for everybody.
I think that is tremendous advice that you're giving. And to me, the important part is just focus on getting up and moving. Do what feels comfortable. Um, I mean, if you want to keep track of your step count, absolutely keep track of it. I mean, I keep track of it every day, but I don't do it because I have to. I do it because I want to. I'm, that's the accountant in me. And I like to keep track of the numbers and I like to see, where I'm at and measure my progress. But the most important part of the progress is how do you feel? I mean, it really is. In closing, is there anything else you want to add? What are you working on now? What are some of your latest projects?
Well, Mark Sisson and I are so excited to release this book, Born to Walk, and the title is conveying all the benefits of a movement-oriented lifestyle, but it's also a pretty much of a takedown of the running boom and all the hype and misinformation, broken promises, and unintended consequences of people who in a well-meaning, well-intentioned manner, lace up their shoes and join the masses with this endurance training. And it certainly is great for people to get off the couch and try to escape from sedentary lifestyle patterns and do something in the name of fitness and activity. But the problem with the running scene is that many people are doing it in an ill-advised manner that becomes overly stressful and exhausting. So the plug here is that you can get really fit and really healthy just from walking. And I'm sure your listeners are familiar. You've told the story many times, but it was so fascinating for me to hear that here's a real life example of someone who's, you've halved your body weight and then some. So you have tremendous long-term success with reducing excess body fat without having to lay in a pool of sweat after these crazy workouts that many people are socialized to think this is the way that I'm going to get back to my desired body weight. And so it's a really tough road to go when you're pushing yourself hard with fitness And instead, there's so many benefits to be had from a gentle, general active lifestyle. And then, now that we have that foundation, like I talked about, you asked me if there's anything I want to add. I would say for most people, it would be great to once in a while, for very short duration, push your body to near maximum output. Now, that could be going in the gym and working on the machines until you get muscular failure or near muscular failure
Hmm.
with those big functional movements. Or I'm such a big fan of sprinting. And of course, sprinting on flat ground is a difficult activity. It might take people a long time to build up the capability, but you can sprint in a lot of different ways. So you can sprint on a stationary bike, you can sprint on a rowing machine, you can sprint in the
Hmm.
swimming pool, you can sprint up staircase, stadium steps, where the low impact makes it accessible to many people. But you want to be huffing and puffing and breathing hard again for very short duration periods of like 10 to 20 seconds is plenty. And that will deliver the most comprehensive fitness benefits in the shortest amount of time by far. And that includes an accelerated reduction of excess body fat by challenging the body for brief bursts with extensive rest in between. So you don't have to be suffering and panting as you get through the session. You can sprint for 10 or 20 seconds and then sit around and rest and walk and catch your breath for a minute or two, and then again deliver another explosive effort. But it's quite a different workout mentality than the endurance scene or the chronic exercise patterns that we see in some of these gym classes where the people are just hanging on for dear life for the 52-minute session. And by the end, all they can think about is going and getting a Jamba Juice smoothie and a breakfast scone, which contains more calories than they just burned in the very strenuous 52-minute class.
I had a good friend that used to go to the gym every night. Um, she used to say, I get on the treadmill until it says I've burned 150 calories so I can drink a beer before I go to bed. Yeah, I know. It's
Hey,
yeah,
yeah,
I know, but
whatever it takes.
I get
Yeah.
it. Well, thank you very much, Brad. This has been a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Stanley.
I can't wait to read your book because I mean, I agreed with every single thing you've said. And it's a pleasure when you find somebody you agree with.
Hey, it's a pleasure to find a real life success story that's taking the words on the pages and bringing them to life and walking around the equator 2.5 times in the last period of time that you mentioned. So keep it up and keep setting the example for everyone.
Thank you.